Hello class, welcome. In this video, we will style our components with styled components. By the way, I love that they use this nail polish icon here. It's pretty cute. Alright, so styled components is this cool library that we can use to create elements, which essentially can be any HTML element. As we can see here, this is an anchor tag, and give them some CSS, and then reuse them across our application anywhere we want in our JSX, and they will have that CSS contained within them. So if we can go to documentation and right here in motivation, you can see there are a couple of reasons that the people behind this think that this is a really good approach of using. So you got automatic critical CSS. So yeah, code splitting. Basically, this means that each component contains its own CSS, meaning that, let's say, for example, you have buttons and you have headers, and you have each of them is in a component, a styled component. And if you have a page that doesn't have any buttons, in that page, no CSS for styling buttons will be loaded. So this is cool that it would reduce the amount of code loaded in different pages, so it will load as much as needed. And no class name bugs. This is cool that because each component you create will have its own styles, and then whenever you use it, when you start your application, all those components will have unique styles, unique class names, so that they don't clash with whatever else library you're using or your own global CSS. And a couple of other advantages. One of them is dynamic styling. This is one of my favorite features about this, is that you can basically leverage your JavaScript skills and write any dynamic property binding inside of that CSS to make it behave differently, like using a global theme or using global variables or like properties to change how your elements look. We will see this in a second. It's pretty cool, trust me. Let's actually start implementing this and seeing the advantages firsthand instead of just reading some words that someone said. Alright, so I'm gonna go to my desktop. Here, open a terminal, and I'll say create React app, and I'll call this styled. I'll be back once this is done. Alright, now that it's done installing, I can close this. And let's open it in VS Code. And let's go to our app.js file. Actually, let's install first the styled components library. So here we'll say npm install styled-components. Components. And while it installs, I'm going to remove this header tag and remove this logo. And here I'll put a couple of things. Let's put a header. Header 1, say styled components. And here I'll put, let's put a form, no action, we'll just put an input. Here, say input. Let's just put like a button here. And this will say create, just to have some elements. I'll save. Let's start this app and close this terminal so it doesn't take space. I'll close it. And opens. Let's import our styled components. So here I'll say import styled from styled as the default export, so no destructuring, because there are some other things that you can get using destructuring from this library. So here now we have styled, we can create our elements. So first let's create, our first thing will be a button. So we will say equals styled dot. So here we will call, we will use any HTML element we want. So in this case, we want a button. So we will say button like this, and then we'll do backticks like this, 2 backticks, enter. And now we'll have a multi-line string. By the way, this is called a tagged template literal, calling a function and then passing it as an argument, a template string like this. Here I want to give it some styling. So let's give it some font. So I'll say font family sans serif. By the way, to get syntax highlighting inside of these tags, you can install, this extension called VS Code style components in VS Code so that you get syntax highlighting of CSS. So let's give it some font size as well. So I'll say font size, let's give it 1.3 rem. I want to remove the border because by default they have a border, so I'll say border none. and want to give it some border radius, let's say 5 pixels. And let's look at our button. So let's save and look at our app. Oh, I didn't actually put it in the markup. So here let's put our button. We'll say button and close the tag, and here we'll say create as well. And by the way, like all your elements that you create with styled, have them Pascal cased, because JSX elements, custom JSX elements have to be Pascal cased. So let's save, meaning like the first letter is capitalized. So let's save and let's look. So this is our button. It looks ugly, so let's fix that. Let's give it some padding and some cool background color. So here I'll give it padding, let's say 7 on the top and bottom and 10 on the right and left. And I'll give it a cool background color, a background of, let's just give it red, red like this. And I'll give it some color of white, because black is a bad contrast with red. So let's say hash FFF like this and save. And oh, the color didn't apply, because yeah, red is like this. I'm not writing JavaScript, I'm writing CSS. Alright, so our button looks a bit better. And some of the features of styled components is that we can use sub-selectors, or no, actually pseudo classes. So we can, if you've used Sass before or less, you're familiar with this. If not, you can just say, so let's say I want to give it a different color when I hover this button. So we can say and colon hover, and here I want to change the color to, once we hover it, we have a blue color. So we'll say blue like this, and let's save. Now if I hover the button, oh, actually it changes the color of the text. I want the background to be blue, not the color of the text. So let's save, change that and save. And now if I hover, it turns into blue. All right, so if you've used Bootstrap or Materialize or any CSS library, you'll see, or their integration in React, you'll see that they use properties of elements to change the any property, any CSS styling of that element. So we can actually implement that using styled components. So let's say we want to give a color for a button, a primary color, if we have that primary prop. So we can pass this prop to our component primary, and now here we can check if we have that prop and change the color. So here we can say background, and here, since this is inside of a template string, we can use JavaScript expressions by saying $ curly brace. Now we can do any JavaScript here. So here we can get our props and say props and do an arrow function like this. So we have to check as well, because if we don't have it, this is gonna bug out. So we have to say props dot primary and say and that means if we have this property, or actually I'll do a ternary to give it another color if we don't have it. So we'll say question mark. So if we have it, then we will give the value of, so if it's primary, let's make it red. So we'll say red, or actually red like this. Else it's gonna be green if it's maybe secondary or anything else. All right, I'll comment this or just remove it. So let's save. Oh, actually we need to put a semicolon here so it compiles properly. Let's save and let's go look at our button. Well, it's red, but if we remove this primary prop, it should become green, and it does. So now, depending on that, whether we have this prop or not, it will give it a different color, which is pretty cool that we have this dynamic control over our CSS. Let me show you a cool way of sharing global styling, aka a theme, in our application using styled components. So here I'll import some other thing from styled components, or I can just say like this. Here I want to import something called theme provider. And what this does is that we can create a theme and give it to our application, and we can use it within our components. So here I'll say const theme equals, and for now I'm just gonna have some colors. So here I'll say primary, and our primary will be red. And this is, by the way, a JavaScript object. So you have to use quotation marks. So here we'll say secondary. And our secondary is green, And now we need to provide this theme. So we can wrap our entire app in theme provider, and we need to pass this theme. So we'll say theme equals theme like this, and close the tag. And here let's take that closing tag and put it here. So we wrap all of our application in this theme provider. Now inside of our components, we will have access to this theme. So here we will say, so let me comment this and leave it like that. Here we can say background. We can say we do an expression like this, and we will say props. We'll get the props, and we'll do an arrow function, and we can just return a value here by saying props. And let's say we want to use the primary color. We'll say props.theme. Now we have this theme property, and we can say .primary like this, and put a semicolon and save. And if we look at our app, it's still red, but to prove to you that it's coming from here, we can change it to teal. Is teal a thing? Yeah, okay, teal is a thing, so we get teal. Cool. And by the way, in the background, it uses a context API. So even if your button is deeply nested inside of another component or is on the top level, it doesn't matter. These properties will still get passed down to all the components inside of this theme provider. Now, let's say I wanted to use a custom header 1. So I can just create that. So I'll say const h1 equals styled dot header 1 like this, and then do backticks. And let's say I wanted to give it some absurdly large font size. So we'll say font size 2 or 3 even rem like this. And now let's change this header 1, Control D here, and say h1 like this, and give it our custom header 1. And we can look here, we'll see that it's massive. But actually right now these two have different font families. So let's make sure that it's the font family is consistent within our app. So now instead of giving it a font family sans serif here, what we can do, we can have that font family sit in our theme, and we can say here, we can say font, and say it's so of course it's going to be a string because this is a JavaScript object again, and we'll say sans serif like this. And here inside of the font family, well, let's copy this expression, and here we'll say font family is props.theme.font, and let's copy that and give it to the header 1 as well. So now if we save, we'll see that these are both now sans serif font, and if we wanted to change the font throughout our entire application, we just change this font variable right here. And by the way, you can have multiple theme providers. You can create another theme and create another theme provider here, and then give it that different theme, and it will still work. One other cool trick that I like to use is let's say we have multiple colors, and we have primary and secondary. Now we can say here we can have like a property inside of our component that tells us what color we want, and then depending on the value of that, we will give the button a different color. So here, let's say we wanted to add a different one, like Bootstrap will have what is it, alert, and this will be yellow. And we can now go to our button, and we can say color equals let's say we wanted to give it now alert. And what we can do now here, instead of doing it like this and just go into primary, we can say, we can remove actually this background. I'll show you some thing. We can, but of course we need to check first if we have that property. So here we take the props, and here we need to check. So we'll say props.color. So if we have it, then let's actually see what this color is and give it to this button. Here we can do something. Let's say we wanted to give more than a color. We want to give multiple CSS rules inside of here. We can import something else from from styled components called CSS. And here, so if we have the property color, we will say CSS, and again do 2 backticks. So we'll have a tag template string, and we can put some CSS values here. Here, now we can say background, and here we'll do another expression, and we'll say, we'll take the props and do an arrow function like this, and we will return props, props.theme. Now the way we can access this dynamically, we can do like this, square brackets, and here we'll say props.color, which is what we have passed here. So now it will reach here and you will find the property that has the name of what we passed. So if it's alert, it's going to get yellow. Here we need to put a semicolon, and we can add some other rules here if we wanted, because this is a multi-line string. Let's save this. Let's look at our app, and we get this yellow, and you can see if like the yellow doesn't have a good contrast with the white, but we can as well like change that. And if we change here, we want to say primary again. It will fetch the primary from our theme, and oh, actually fetch the teal for some reason. We have a red squiggly here. Oh, actually this semicolon is an extra. We don't need that. Okay, we have no errors now. So yeah, now that we gave it primary, it's gave it this teal color, and if we give it what is it, secondary, it's gonna give it the green color. All right, so there are a lot of tricks that you can use with styled components that can make your dynamic property values really cool. So actually, let's make these into their own components, because of course we don't want to bloat our components with this CSS. So we can just cut this, and here we'll create components. Well, actually not components, because those will be the React components. Let's call them elements / let's call this button.js, and here let's paste that, and we need to import the theme, not theme provider, we need to import the CSS and the styled. So here let's import those, remove the theme provider because we don't need it, and here we need to say export default this, and let's save. And now we can just import that, we don't need CSS here, and we can just say import button from same directory elements / button like this, and save, and everything should work the same, and it does. So you see how we can create our elements and put them into their own components and reuse them wherever we need them through our application. And we can as well make this header one into its own element here, and we can as well create an index.js in here and import all of them to that index, so we don't have to import them one by one. We can just say import and do destructuring and import them from that index. So there are a lot of tricks that you can do to modularize your components more and customize them as much as you can. You can take input from the user and change your theme according to that input, which makes your application so much more vibrant than using traditional CSS. Anyway, this is it for this video. I hope you learned something from it. Let me know in the comments if you liked style components, if you prefer it over something like traditional CSS or Sass or JSS. I would like to know if what you guys are using to style your React components. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.